end, we will have a time for questions and answers. I welcome everyone to our event tonight. Just a few more folks are filing in at the moment, so we'll just get started in about 1 minute. Thank you everyone for joining us. And we have a few more folks joining as we are getting ready to start. And we do have our chat box available. If you would like to put any questions into the chat box, we can address those at the end during a question and answer time. And it is 5 o'clock, so I'm going to get started. Welcome to Preventing Banking Scams with Kathleen Titsworth. I am Carla Umland, the Assistant Director at Stonington Free Library. And I want to thank you again for being here this evening, and a special thanks to Kathleen for presenting this important program and for all the work she does in consumer affairs for the state of Connecticut and for putting this presentation together. I also want to thank all of our staff and volunteers for their support in organizing this event. And we are also joined in sponsoring this event by other libraries in the region. And the libraries that are sponsoring tonight's program are, in addition to Stonington Free Library, Bill Memorial Library, Otis Library, Groton Public, and Ledyard Public Libraries. We are keeping microphones muted to avoid distractions, and then we will do questions and answers at the end. And we decided to do this important program because, unfortunately, these scams are becoming more and more sophisticated, and people are, in fact, falling prey to them and have lost savings. And we don't want that to continue. We want to be able to prevent that and give you the tools to do so. So we've invited Kathleen Titsworth from the state of Connecticut, Department of Banking, Government Relations, and Consumer Affairs, which provides free and unbiased information and presentations that focus on consumer protection and investor education topics. So I now turn it over to you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Carla, very much for having me. I appreciate being here. And we were just talking, and I was thanking her for having this as a virtual event. And she said it's just as convenient for all of you as it is for me as the speaker. I was doing so many of these throughout the last few years. And it's always great to be able to offer these programs all across the state, and these virtual Zoom and other platforms just make it wonderful. So thank you again. I want to mention to you, I do see a few people in the waiting room, Carla. But I will delve right in as everybody is joining. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a presentation ready to share with you all. I've done this at a few libraries recently. And so I hope, I know this information is very pertinent. I hope it's a few new things. I think some things will be familiar, but I hope I'm sharing some new takes on a few of these scams. They change all the time. We try to keep up with them. It seems the scammers always seem to be a step ahead of us. But one thing that I hope you leave with several things, but one major thing, these scammers all have certain red flags, things to look out for, that even though it comes at us in a different way, ultimately, many of these red flags are the same. And I hope you'll be able to recognize a lot of these. But first, I really just briefly want to tell you who I am and about my agency. My name is Kathleen Titsworth. I'm an outreach coordinator with the State of Connecticut Department of Banking. We're a state agency. Many people have heard of Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, maybe the Department of Public Health, the Department of Transportation, of course, DOT. But Department of Banking, many people have never heard of unless you need us in terms of consumers. Those that work in the financial services area will have certainly heard of us, and especially if they're licensed with us. We regulate three main divisions: state chartered banks and credit unions in the state. These are more the community banks. I know in your neck of the woods, Chelsea Grattan is a big community bank, state chartered bank. The Bank of America's, Webster, TD, those are federally regulated. So we focus on the state chartered banks and credit unions. We also have a large division called our Consumer Credit Division, and we regulate and license what are considered non-depository mortgage lenders, mortgage brokers, mortgage loan servicers, money transmitters. So if you need to wire money somewhere from the state, if you need to cash a check and don't have a traditional bank account, you can go to facilities that you probably see them maybe in your neck of the woods, like Norwich, New London. We see them in New Haven, Hartford, and they can charge a fee to cash a check, but they have certain state laws they have to follow because they can't charge exorbitant fees, things like that. We also license in that area debt collectors. So if you owe debt and it's gone into collection, that person or entity that reaches out to you needs to be properly licensed or registered with us in the state. And then we also have a very large securities division, and that's where all our investor education comes out of. Investment professionals, financial advisors, financial planners, they're all registered, and securities in the state, to sell securities in the state, have to be properly registered. So basically what I like to say is if you have your money in a bank or credit union, if you're getting a loan or if you're investing your money, we are the state agency that has the regulatory authority over those entities. And so protecting consumer investors, it's all part of our mission. And that's where I come in with educational outreach, because preventing fraud and scams is so important. And, you know, I consider frauds and scams, well, they're certainly a crime. However, they're a different type of crime than, say, if somebody broke into your car and took items from you, or if you lost your wallet or left your wallet somewhere and somebody used all your credit cards. That's really crime. That's really traditional, somebody that's a thief. And even if they're using your credit cards, yes, that's identity theft, but they've physically taken your wallet or your purse or your information. These types of frauds and scams, these scammers, these con artists, they manage to trick us into giving them our information. So a lot of these scams and frauds I'm gonna talk about today, we want to prevent, we want to learn the red flags so that we don't allow somebody who calls us out of the blue, we are minding our own business, and they interfere, they come into our homes and they convince us that for whatever reason, we need to give our credit card information, our bank account number, maybe something even like our Medicare number or things like that, or worse, that they convince us to send them money. Right? It's still a crime, but it's a different type of it. And we want to learn how to prevent this, because we've earned this money. It's hard earned, and we don't want to give it away to anybody else. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go right into a few of the common banking scams or financial type of scams that we see and that the federal government shares reports on. In fact, the Federal Trade Commission, if anyone is interested in doing research or reading up on this, ftc.gov is a great resource. In fact, they specifically have a consumer section. I believe it's consumer.ftc.gov. and you can get statistics on the latest scams and frauds that are out there. I get a lot of great information from them, and you can even sign up and get alerts from them. And as different frauds and scams they're hearing, they often put out information to the public, and they continue to put that on their website. One of the most common ones, and it's been a common fraud for years. I've been doing this for a long time. I've been at the agency for 20 years. Actually, I had 20 years last year, and I've been doing this for about 15 of them. And this government imposter scam, you may be familiar, or you may have even gotten calls like this where somebody calls and claims to be from the federal government, often during tax season, claiming to be from the IRS. And these scams work oftentimes because they prey on your emotions. And your emotion, your immediate emotion with this would be fear. Why is the government calling me? Did I pay my taxes? I know I clicked the button, but did I get that confirmation? I should have saved it. I didn't save it when the screen came up and told me that it was accepted, but all these things go through your mind. And maybe you didn't owe taxes, and somebody is calling you sounding like a figure of authority, telling you you owe taxes, or maybe you didn't pay enough of them, but that conveniently you can just pull out your credit card and take care of these taxes now. Perhaps what they will do is kind of sound nice and accommodating initially on the phone, but the more you ask questions, and perhaps you say, you know, I don't do these kinds of things over the phone. If you put that in the mail, I'll look for it. They'll usually turn and get angry. And oftentimes not want you to ask any questions. So the key is, the big red flag here is that they don't want you asking questions, but that they want you to either send money, maybe even cash. They might even tell you you can pay with a gift card, because they could say they don't accept checks, or that they don't, they wouldn't ask you to wire money. That could sound fraudulent, but maybe they'll want you to buy a gift card and send that in. Trust me, I know it kind of sounds like you would spot this, and there's no way that you would become a victim of this. And I hope that's true. But unfortunately, they catch people off guard. And sometimes they even threaten to call the police, and that gets people very scared. So bottom line, nobody from the government, state or federal, will call you and require you to immediately pay for something that they claim that you owe. And just sort of as an aside, during COVID, I was doing a lot of sort of COVID type scams, frauds and scams. And we were hearing reports that people were claiming to be from Department of Public Health, maybe the Center for Disease Control, and calling people claiming that you were reported to be a close contact, right? During that time, people were scared and nervous. So they change up the type of scams they do, but still, bottom line, the government will never contact you in this way, demanding money. Okay, another very common one, I still refer to it as a grandparent scam. There are several other takes on this, where they contact you claiming to be either a family member or calling on behalf of a family member. So the classic grandparent scam is somebody calling and saying, Grandma, Grandpa. And when I'm in a room full of people doing this presentation, I'll ask everybody who's a grandparent to raise your hand. And if you're not a grandparent, well, guess what? You're not going to fall for this scam, because you're not grandma or grandpa, and it's clearly the wrong number, and you hang up. And then I'll say, then my next question is, are you called grandma or grandpa? And many people say, oh, I'm called Pepe or Meme or Nana or grandma or granny, something different, gran. And I say, well, chances are you're probably going to hang right up too, because that's not what your grandchild calls you. However, those that are called grandma or grandpa, we often don't even think initially that that doesn't sound like our grandchild. Let's not even discuss artificial intelligence, AI, where they could sort of, fake the voice. Even just straight up, somebody just calling, And you may say, well, Jimmy, you don't sound like yourself. Well, maybe they sound like this. And they say, Grandma, I was in a fight and I was punched in the nose. So that's why I don't really sound like myself. Or maybe they're whispering and they say, I'm calling from a police station, Grandma. I can't really talk, but that's why it doesn't sound like me. And you may say, well, Jimmy, why are you calling me? Why didn't you call your parents? Why aren't you here? Why aren't you? And they will stop you and say, stop asking questions, Grandma. Stop asking questions, Grandpa. I just need you to send money. And they will cut the conversation short, say they don't have time, say they're in a hurry, or say you just can't ask questions. I need you to send money and I need you not to tell mom and dad. And unfortunately, it's where they get people. And people will say they'll do anything for their grandchild and then later say it didn't really sound like them, or I wish I called my son or daughter before I just sent the money. But again, they prey on your emotions. And when you receive, it's easy for us to hear the story, even hearing me tell this story. I'm sure many of you are thinking, I would never fall for that. How could anybody be so dumb? Well, guess what? We have not gotten that actual call. It's a lot different when we are on the other end of that phone call that we think is legitimate. Now, I want to share another variation of this. And this is actually a story that somebody about a month ago shared with me when I did a fraud program. And she told me she heard from somebody who she thought was a friend of hers. And so I can't recall if if it was an email that came through versus a phone call. I can't recall that. But her friend travels a lot, and so she thought that her friend couldn't access her bank account or was having trouble, and that she was in England and that she needed to wire money. And I sort of stopped her and I said, doesn't this sound strange? And she said, no, my friend travels all the time. And I hadn't talked to her in a while. So, I thought it was real. So she went to a ShopRite where she could wire money. The person in ShopRite, it sounded like a scam to that worker. And he said, why don't you call your friend? And so she did. And her friend was home. Her friend was not in England. So this worker in a ShopRite prevented the fraud. So my purpose for telling this story is it's not always a grandparent scam. It could be somebody calling and saying, I'm calling on behalf of your sister in Florida. Oh, I have a sister in Florida. Like, what? This is weird though. Why are you calling on her behalf? Maybe there was information they saw on social media. Maybe there was something they read in the paper, but oftentimes these scammers will have something legitimate and they call and they make their claim and we believe it. So, but what I want to share with you is that oftentimes, if we find ourselves going to wire money, whether it's the bank or whether it's a grocery store where we could wire money, or we go to buy gift cards, oftentimes when you go up to the register or when you go up to the teller, they may ask you a few questions. If you go up to in Walgreens with a whole bunch of gift cards, that person's likely been trained to spot potential scams and may ask you a few questions. And instead of sort of thinking it's none of their business, I'm sending all these gift cards because I'm protecting a family member of mine. Or oh my goodness, the IRS just called me and I need to. If you I always see these people as like our second line of defense. Oftentimes, like I said, people in Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, they may have been trained. Bank tellers and credit union tellers have certainly been trained to spot this type of fraud. And when they see you acting out of sorts or maybe nervous and ask you a few questions, they're doing it to help. So I wanted to share that story because I wanted to point that out. Okay, another common scam we've seen for a while, and in fact has slightly changed in the last year. This has actually become a more common one, is what we've referred to as a tech support scam. And the traditional scam was the phone call. And I actually got this phone call, gosh, maybe 2018. I was home. And it was around dinner time and my kids were younger and they were kind of, running around and I was making dinner and not really thinking about it. And my phone rang and they said they were from Microsoft. And I didn't initially quite, these types of scams I wasn't too familiar with. And my laptop at home was actually causing me problems. And I paused and I kept him on the phone. But then the more he talked, he wanted to access my device. He wanted me to come over to my laptop and put a code in. I was very busy making dinner. I just didn't have time. But I started to catch on that this was weird. Why would Microsoft know there's an issue with my computer? Um, Microsoft, Apple has thousands, tens of thousands, millions of customers. They are not tracking everyone's laptop. And the company doesn't have like people that sit and monitor and then say, oh, Kathleen Titsworth in Connecticut is having an issue. We got to call her. And then they look up the number and call. It was a classic scam. A lot of people caught on to. Unfortunately, a lot of people did allow them to access their computer. And unfortunately, they go in, they could put malware, they can install some things on there that then you need assistance with. Maybe they'll sell you a repair service. That was the classic scam. Well, what's happening now, because people have caught on to the phone calls, what happens now is they're accessing somehow getting in and creating a pop-up on your computer. And what I tell people is if you get a strange pop-up, turn your computer off. Just turn it off. When you turn it back on, if it happens again, leave it and either check with a family member who's maybe a little more savvy and can recognize perhaps what's happening, or contact a reputable service. Because what's happening is this pop-up, it's got an instruction. You either click here or you call this number. And when you do that, they're either conveniently offering assistance or that you need to give them remote access. And if you think it's a reputable company that you've just called, or if you think it's Microsoft or Apple, you may do that. And again, they may install this malware, but worse, if you have anything like online banking or other types of apps that you've logged into, they could potentially access that. And there was a case a few years ago in Hartford of a gentleman who this happened to, and the company convinced him that the work he had done, he thought he did a payment of $25.95 or whatever for their assistance, and they came back and somehow convinced him that he owed a lot more. And he paid it through cryptocurrency, which is something I'll talk about in a little while as well, but it's a digital form of currency. And they have special ATMs at convenience stores. They're called Bitcoin ATMs. And he lost a lot of money to the scam, which just started as this tech support. So be on the lookout for that. Any strange pop-ups with your computer, make sure to ignore. And if you do get these calls, because I'm sure they're still calling as well, make sure that red flag comes up. If somehow they want you to maybe pay in advance, or somehow they want you to access your computer and give them access, hang up. A little more tips on this. I wanted to share this because I did get this information from the Federal Trade Commission website. Just as a reminder, don't click on these unsolicited pop-ups. Maybe you get a link via text message. You don't want to click on those links as well, or email links. If they conveniently provide a phone number, don't call that number, right? Because it could take you, they're going to answer it as that reputable source. You don't want to download software at this person who called you out of the blue. You don't know this person. You don't know that they're with a reputable place like Microsoft. So you definitely don't want to download the software. And then I need my computer's blocked a little here. And of course, don't allow an unknown person who contacted you again out of the blue or through this pop-up to take control of your computer. Okay. And again, the government, if they're claiming to be the government, will never request that you send money by wire transfer, cryptocurrency, or these gift cards. All right, another type of these common scam. These first few scams I'm talking about do focus on telephone. I'm going to also go into more online. So this is we're actually just at the peak still as well. But the prize scam, you've won. You found out you get a phone call that you won a prize, maybe you won a raffle or a lottery, and your first inclination may say, I didn't enter. Well, they're smart. They're saying, well, somebody anonymously entered you. Maybe they even say you want a trip. And the catch with this though, is that there's a fee. Okay. And you need to pay the fee right away. Remember that red flag? It's pulling out that credit card or giving them access to your bank account to take the money out. And they convince you this is a $10,000 trip for 4 people. We're going to fly you down to Florida, and then you're going to take a cruise. You're going to go to all these islands. You just need to pay a small fee of $1,200. And that, oh my gosh, that's nothing compared to the $10,000. And you're thinking, wow, that does seem worth it. And we haven't had vacation in a while. And they're going to send me more information, but yeah, I think I can do this. And again, that's where they get us. If they make it seem maybe reasonable, maybe you're just thinking it's too good to be true, but I'm finally getting this call. I won this prize. And maybe it's not even that big. Maybe it's even just something small where they say you won something local and it's only $25. But guess what? They get your credit card. Are they charging 25 or are they charging a whole lot more? I'm guessing they will max it if that's what happens. So we need to really be aware that if we didn't enter a lottery, if we didn't enter a raffle, that we're not a winner. We're not gonna, and we won't get a call. And if we entered something locally and they follow up with calls, they will be very clear what it is. They will have the date where you were there. And it's likely the same day. Let's just take, for instance, if there was a church raffle and you couldn't stay for it, you would likely get a call that night or the next day. These calls come out of the blue. And maybe if they don't ask you to pay immediately over the phone, they may even tell you to wire money or again, send gift cards. I want to talk about charity scams because unfortunately, they're still preying on emotions here. Remember, the first few were fear that the government's calling you or that a family member's in trouble. This last one was excitement that I won a prize. Well, this emotion is the emotion of somebody who is empathetic, who is giving. I think a lot of people are good. I think most people are good, decent people. And if a police organization calls and is looking to collect on a charity or maybe some other kind of social service organization that sounds local, you may think, oh, I have been wanting to donate. I haven't done it, donated to a charity in a while. Okay. And most of us would say, I'll pledge that and send me the information. Well, these scammers don't want you to hang up the phone without paying. They want you to pay right away. So again, these are unsolicited, right? Then they want you to pay right away. And they'll really try to keep you on the phone, especially if they think you're interested. I will say specifically about the police, you can call your local police. They will not solicit over the phone and require you to pay over the phone. It's one of the classic scams that the scammers use. And I think that a lot of times they call it the fraternal order of police. A few people have told me that they've been called by police from out of state. And so just remember that. And anytime you want to donate to a charity, you want to do your due diligence. We can always check on a charity. Google, you want to be careful with Google. You want to, like, oftentimes the first response that comes up is an ad or a sponsor. You want to do your thorough research, but you can check on charities, check on the legitimacy, and even legitimate charities. You can check and see how much of your money is going towards the cause versus to administrative costs. It's so important because, as many of us know, when you give to one charity, you get 5 requests, even if these are all legitimate. And if you give to those 5, you get 5. So you're getting 25 requests. And I will say from experience, I was taking care of my elderly mom, and she was inundated. And it's really hard to get them to stop. The legitimate charities, if you write to them in writing, even if it's just a note, the legitimate charities will take your name off their lists. But the ones that aren't, once you get on a list of the fraudulent charities, it's really hard. It's really hard to get them to stop. I just want to share, I wanted to make sure to share this information with all of you on charity fraud. All right, we're going to move a little bit into the online types of frauds and scams, because many of us, oh, there's my phone, are using our cell phones all the time, are on tablets or devices, and particularly over the holidays, recently, I feel like ever since COVID, the stores don't always have the stock that they used to have, and you find yourself shopping online. I know even when it's not holiday season, if I need a dress for a wedding or a party or looking for certain things for my kids, you go to the store and they don't have the khaki pants and khaki, they only have them in black, but you need khaki for that parade. You find yourself shopping online. And interestingly, I think it's a joke we all say in my family all the time, but you might start talking about something, like one day I was talking about tote bags. And all of a sudden on my social media, I was getting all these ads. Or sometimes you might click on one ad in your social media. And I'll just say Facebook, for example, or Instagram, both of them. If you click on an ad and look and I say, oh, I'm not going to purchase that. Well, guess what? All of a sudden, your feed is full of more ads like that, because they follow what you do. And my advice with these, and it's not necessarily frauds or scams, but they could be, because we don't know if all of these companies are legitimate. I crossed out this company name, the picture I shared there, that was from my Instagram in December. And I crossed it out because that could be a legitimate company. And I don't want to, I don't want anybody, I don't want to maybe unnecessarily talk badly about a certain company. But what we need to do is do our research. We need to do our due diligence, verify that a website is legitimate. So my number one piece of advice is, even if it's a company like Coach or Vera Bradley, or let me think of the men on the line, Nike, or like Dick's Sporting Good, if a company like that comes up, you don't necessarily know that when you click that, you're going to be taken to the legitimate website. So I always say, if you see something like this and say, oh my gosh, those tote bags are only $59. It's just what I'm looking for. Or these sneakers, I've never, this is such a great deal. I've been looking for these sneakers. I say, open a separate browser on your computer, or on your phone, but make sure you're on your secure Wi-Fi, and type in the name of that company, and you want to go to that company's website. And if you see those sneakers on sale, or this tote bag on sale at that website, and you're on a secure site and you're comfortable doing the shopping there, then it's legitimate. Beyond that, you still want to check return and refund policies, particularly on websites maybe you've never used before. And certainly if it's a website you've never heard of, always Google and check. Always check reviews, see what people are saying. It may be decent. They may say it's legitimate. Better Business Bureau is a good resource for this as well, because, you may see a lot of great reviews, but a lot of times these companies write it themselves. And then the other thing I suggest is, if you do feel comfortable that it's a legitimate website and what you're ordering from, perhaps use something like PayPal or a credit card that you will know right away, a credit card that you could check immediately to see that just your charge has been made. Okay. But with social media, it's just too easy and convenient for us to pick up our phone and just click and order and say, oh, that was great. I'm going to get a great deal on those jeans. And then they never arrive. Your credit card's been charged. Or maybe you order that dress and it doesn't come in on time. and then you try to return it and it costs more than it even cost you initially to get it. So these are just, there's sort of consumer protection, but also trying to avoid a scam in a website that might not be legitimate. All right, I do want to talk about these romance or sweetheart scams because we don't just see them on Dr. Phil or on these TV shows. And they do have to do with social media and being online because it's generally where they meet people on dating sites. I even know a colleague of mine who is on a few dating sites because she's recently single, and a lot of people are popping up and she said she can't put her finger on it, but she just doesn't feel comfortable with some of the questions they ask. Where they get people is where they develop a relationship. Oftentimes they're targeting older women or older men. And perhaps they're just following their feed and they can somehow see that maybe they're recently widowed or that they're clearly single. They may say they're from the same town, the same hometown. I think sometimes on our profiles, we say what school we went to. They may find something in common. We say, oh, I don't remember you at that school, and say, well, I was a few years behind you, or I was a few years older. But they start a relationship and it's not always romantic. They don't always, it could just be a friendship. It could be, when I grew up, I had a pen pal back in the day, and it's just the type of relationship where you look forward to communicating with this person every day. Sometimes they might move on to another app like WhatsApp or something like that, but they're communicating often, and maybe even they start to compliment you, and maybe they start to tell you they have feelings for you. This scammer takes their time. All the other scams, they want you to act right away, pay right away, don't ask questions. They don't want you to hang up the phone. This scammer takes their time. This con artist really puts in the time and effort to get to know you, tell you all the things you want to hear. And you have a relationship when of course they need money for a health issue, or they live far away, they want to have a plane ticket to come visit you. And that's when you send the money. Maybe you're sending gift cards. Maybe they just take a little initially, but then eventually they need more. And this is where they scam people, because then oftentimes they'll keep it up until the person starts to say, look, I'm sending you too much money, I can't do it anymore. And you never hear from them again, or they guilt you. And we've had cases of people taking out loans, maxing out credit cards for these people they've never met. So I just want to share this with you. If you know anyone that perhaps has a new love interest online, the key is, have you met them in person? And even if they say, well, I've talked to them, we've done FaceTime calls, oftentimes those can be disguised as well. So just want to share this. Quickly, because I'm just keeping my eye on the time. I want to share some warning signs of investment fraud, because a lot of the times people are getting these through people they meet online. But gosh, you could be sitting next to somebody on a plane and they could be like boasting about their great investments they've been doing. And, the emotion there might be a little greed on our part. We're doing okay. Our investments are doing okay, but how did this person double their money so quickly? Like, the economy is not great, and I'm scrimping and saving, and this person just in a snap doubled his money. Guaranteed returns and quick profits are huge red flags. They say the investment is risk-free. Not true. Maybe they won't send written information on it or use high pressure sales, really try to push you into it. And then, of course, it sounds too good to be true. All right, think you can trust this man. Wants to sell you an investment. It's pretty dapper. Looks like he's just been at this, black tie affair. Well, think again. Bernie Madoff is a classic example. He targeted millionaires, sure, and he was a millionaire. But if you ever have a chance to look up some of the documentaries, he really, he got greedy. And I think with him, it was a lot of power. But we hear people like Bernie Madoff on a much smaller scale, even just in local communities. Maybe there's a local investment club, uh, maybe a women's organization, and somebody joins and tries to get them to invest. We've heard cases of this happening in churches where a new minister comes in, that sort of authority figure. So just keep in mind with your hard-earned money, again, when it comes to investing, you want to use a legitimate professional and not just go by what somebody else is just suggesting. Okay, cyber frauds and scams. Again, I went to the federal government. This time I went to the Department of Justice and the Internet Crime Complaint Center. They're known as IC3. They keep information and data on internet scams. And in 2023, last year, they received almost 1,880,000 complaints specific to internet scams. The losses totaled over $12 billion. And these phishing spoofing that I'm about to go over with you, I'm going to give a few examples of actual examples that I've gotten through my email or through my phone. These phishing and spoofing are considered, are the #1 crimes that have been reported. The largest amount of money loss, though, are these investment scams. So that's why I wanted to mention that. I wanted to definitely mention investment scams because it's something a lot of people don't think about could be a scam, because they think, well, if somebody is investing my money, they've got to be legitimate, right? Well, we always want to check on somebody selling us investments, and you could do that through the Department of Banking. All right, so I talked about the phishing and spoofing scams being the most commonly reported. Well, this is a classic example. I actually got this a few years ago, and it was an email. Clearly, it looks like it's from the U.S. Postal Service. It's got their logo. It says it's from the United States Postal Service. Well, if it says that, then it must be, right? Wrong. Just because the from field gives a name, we could put any name. Think about it. When you've set up your email account, you could actually put several variations of your name in there. Most of us put our first name and last name because we want people we're sending emails to know it's coming from us. This says it's from the United States Postal Service. But if you either right click or on your phones, if you hold your finger down over the name, who it's from, wait a few seconds, there's usually a little pop out. Well, look on here, CJH9669 at newyorkcity.com. That's the actual email address it came from, not a United States Postal Service. So that was my first clue. The other clue was just our company's courier couldn't make a delivery. They sent me a message. I have to click a link. Yeah, it looks pretty legitimate, but it's kind of a weird email. And why would the post office email me? First of all, how does the post office have my email address? The company, maybe if I ordered stuff, maybe Amazon or, Macy's or some legitimate company that maybe I've ordered stuff, they have my email, but the post office certainly doesn't. So that's weird. Also, my letter carrier, if they can't deliver something because it's too big or maybe I have to sign for it, they leave a little form and I have to go to the post office and pick it up. You don't get an email like this. So if we really think about it, everything about this email is kind of strange. And if we click on any of these links, they might take us to a website that looks legitimate. But what's going to happen and where does the scam come in? They're going to need maybe a password, maybe a credit card, some personal identifying information about ourselves that we should never, ever give over the phone, as I discussed earlier, or to these emails, these emails that are coming in. I talked to a woman last week. I was at a library and she got an email that said, oh, there was an issue with her PayPal account, but I don't have PayPal. So I looked at her and I said, so do you think that email is legitimate? And she said, oh, no, it probably isn't. So see, it doesn't always dawn on us that an email that comes through to us is not legitimate or could be a scam. But we need to remember we have certain companies that we've given our email address to, maybe stores we've bought from, our bank or credit card company. Perhaps we do online banking or have online access to our credit cards. The schools are, if our children's schools or things like that, or if we go to college. But when you get emails from random companies like this that aren't obviously fake, oftentimes you get them and they have words in another language or symbols or inappropriate. It's an inappropriate product. We know those are scams. Those are the obvious. But ones like this, we need to keep in mind, if we don't have a relationship with that company, why are they emailing us? So it's likely a scam. So we want to delete it. Okay. All right. Now here's another one. So that one, I had no relationship with the post office. Here's another variation of a phishing email. Now I have an Apple device. I also have iPads in my house, and we even have an iMac computer. Okay. Not a laptop. We actually have an actual desktop. So I have a few Apple devices. So when I got an email from Apple, I didn't immediately delete it because I have a relationship with them. However, once I opened this up and I saw Case ID with a link, that was a little bit weird. And then if you look down into the body, they say we couldn't charge your account for your case, and there's a different case number. So there's discrepancies. They're just saying hello. They don't have my name in it. They're threatening to permanently lock my Apple ID. So this one I looked at and I had a feeling right away it was a scam, but I also work, I'm looking out for these all the time. It does have a logo on the bottom. It says it's from Apple support. Now I didn't include on this example, and I already deleted it, so I couldn't go back and add it in, but I'm sure if I right clicked where it says from Apple, I'm sure that would not have been a legitimate Apple email. So in this case, what I did was I actually called. I reached out to Apple. I looked up their phone number that I know is legitimate, and I called, and I got through to somebody. I said it was an issue with an online email, and they put me through to somebody, and they verified we are not sending out emails to customers threatening to lock their Apple ID. Interestingly, the other thing I did just to double check, I went on their website. So the other thing is, if you don't want to call, I went to the Apple website. I typed in on my secure browser that I knew was the legitimate Apple website. And usually at the very bottom of the page, there's like customer support, things like this. And I contacted customer support that way as well. And it verified, and I also Googled. So 3 things. I Googled, and immediately as I was typing in, I received an email from Apple claiming that my Apple ID would be permanently locked. You literally type in the language they used, and all of these responses came in from people that I could see had similar issues. And I went through until I found a response from Apple, and Apple said that they were not sending these. Okay. The key, do not click the link. Even if you're unsure, it's best just to delete it and look up to see if Apple, and contact Apple yourself, because these links again will send you to a website that looks legitimate, and they're going to want you to give them probably your Apple ID and password. And that's very powerful for any of us that have Apple devices. All right. Another form of these email scams is called spoofing. And that's when they pretend to, not pretend, it's where they actually somehow get a hold of a person's address book. And they do pretend, they send out emails as if they're them. So in this case, this is a friend of mine, Melissa, who somehow, got hacked, and emails were going out from her, but she wasn't sending these. That is not her email address. And it's really kind of random. She's saying, I should have sent these sooner, ... I just realized you haven't seen them. Here are these 5 pics. And they want my curiosity to get the best of me, and they want me to click on that link. And it's either gonna maybe malware. There's certainly not going to be a link to pictures. So I'll either get malware, something strange happened to my device. um, or something, and then a convenient pop-up, maybe going back to the text scam. So we want to be careful with that. If we're ever concerned, if someone, tells us, oh, I got an email from you and it seems kind of weird, go in, maybe change passwords, things like that to your email. Run a scan, and just let your friends know, I'm not sending these. This wasn't me. Another variation of this, as opposed to email, is I've gotten scams like this through my Messenger app. With social media, you have the Messenger app. I've seen ones like this where people were friends of mine were supposedly sending pictures. So you just do not want to click on the link. All right, here's a text scam that I had gotten a couple of years ago. And right away I knew it was a fake because I don't know this number. If texts come in from numbers I don't know, delete. If texts come into you to numbers from numbers that you're not familiar with, definitely, I don't want to say always delete. I can't say that because these days a lot of companies are verifying appointments. My hairdresser verifies appointments through text. I just today got a text from our pediatric physicians. Why can't I think of the name of that type of doctor? Pediatrician. I got a text that claimed, well, no, I'm sorry. I got an actual text from the pediatrician's office wanting me to click a link and register in advance for the appointment. So here's where it's tough. A few years ago, I would have said, if you got any texts with links, do not click on them. And now doctor's office, dentist, like I said, hairdresser, a lot of places are confirming appointments or sending information with links in them. We need to verify. We need to separate what emails are coming in legitimately from the ones that are not legitimate. So this, I think, is a good example of one. I'm randomly getting a text that I want a $1,000 Amazon gift card. They don't say who they're from. Most of the times it says, this is Pediatric Associates of Connecticut. I'm confirming your appointment. Or this is so-and-so hair salon. You get texts like this that don't even say who they are. Now, this one was even sent to 5 other people. That's a little bit strange, because that shouldn't happen from legitimate sources that are texting you. And I'm not confirming anything. They're just telling me I want a prize. Remember that prize scam? It's too good to be true. Well, there's no way I want a $1,000 Amazon gift card for nothing. And I'm sure if I went as far as clicking that link, I'm sure the way to get that prize would be to, maybe give your bank account number and they'll deposit it, or Venmo, give your Venmo information, maybe send them just a few dollars so that they could cover the fees, but they'll probably take a lot more. Or even they may even take me to a site where I could put a credit card in. Just remember that these texts, we want to separate legitimate from these scams that are coming in. And they're usually, if we need to think about it, or if we think it's weird, it's likely a scam. Here's another one. This just came in a few weeks ago. This is my most recent example, because I was talking with a group of students recently, and I said, well, what's the most common type of text scam you all get? And they said job offers. So this came in, right away, there's a typo. I'm Maria, period. And then lowercase a recruiter at ZipRecruiter. I think even ZipRecruiter might be spelled wrong. So I recognized this right away because I said, oh goodness, like first of all, not interested in remote work, but what if I was a student that is interested in a summer job, having trouble? I've applied to 10 places. Nobody is hiring. Oh, now I have this convenient text that's okay. There's no link. So, because I know links could be problematic, but there's typos. Daily pay is 200 to 800 USD versus the $. That sounds like it's probably foreign, maybe coming from another country, but maybe a student, maybe a young person wouldn't recognize that. And they want me to call through a WhatsApp. Nope. So we just don't want these random texts that are coming through. They're more than likely scams. You want to find a job through legitimate sources, through going online and looking, locally. Also, too, I just want to point out, because I've just noticed, it's coming from Shelton Zero OCU at iCloud.com. They're not even trying to make it seem like it's a Zip Recruiter. So just remember, odd things like this, these job offers are often more trouble than they're worth. And oftentimes with these, they make people pay in first and then they've paid. I even heard recently one job like this that came up to somebody. They were sent a check, told to deposit it, and then use that money to purchase stuff. They wanted them to try stuff out. Well, when they spent the money, it turned out that that check was counterfeit, and the bank was coming back at them for the money. And when they tried to reach out to the source, they were gone. They were gone. Stopped answering phones. Wouldn't have anything to do with them. So to reiterate, all of these types of frauds and scams, always verify who you're speaking with. If you get a call that's claiming to be your doctor's office and that there's an issue with they're changing their system, or there's an issue with something that your payment method or whatever, and they want you to give information over the phone, you want to assume that it's not your doctor's office. I hate to say this, but when it comes to somebody asking you, because that's that red flag, personal information or wanting you to pay over the phone. If you think it's legitimate, like your doctor's office or a bank, even if you think it's the federal government, you should be able to hang up with that person, call back on a number that is legitimate. Because let's say for some weird reason, the federal government really is calling you. There should be no reason that you can say to them, I'm just not comfortable doing this over the phone. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to look up the IRS. And you may do that, be on hold for 3 hours. If you actually get that person, then you know it's legitimate, right? But if that person doesn't want you to hang up, that's a pretty good sign that they're a scammer. Your doctor's office, if it was a legitimate call, should say, oh, Mrs. Jones, no problem. Call us back or come down to the office tomorrow. We'll go over this in person. I'm sorry to call you. I probably shouldn't have asked you to do this over the phone. Okay. So just remember that if your gut is telling you I shouldn't be giving this information over the phone, then don't, because you probably shouldn't be. Okay. Always verify and never give out your personal information in response to these unsolicited calls, emails, or texts, right? The key is they're unsolicited and they're calling you out of the blue. Never wire, send gift cards, or use cryptocurrency, these cryptocurrency ATM machines, to send money to strangers, because they are strangers. So I also want to say, review your financial account statements. Check that if you still are getting it in the mail. We get credit card statements in the mail. My bank statement, I have paperless, but credit card statements come in the mail. Open them up and check them. Those statements that are online, if you're paperless, check them often. At the very least, check them before you pay, that you'll get a notice that your payment is due. Go through, open it up and check it. Even if there is a 5-cent charge, you tell that company, that credit card company or your financial institution, because if you ignore it in a few months, it's not going to be 5 cents, it's going to be $500. We've even heard, something as low as like $2.99, a little charge like that they're hoping you're not going to report. You need to report any charge that you don't believe that you made to those accounts, because that's sometimes the scammers will do that. They'll test it. And if you don't report it, or if you don't change your number, then the next month or maybe in 2 months, that's when they go for the big one. And I always recommend checking your credit report as well. So annualcreditreport.com is the government source for checking your credit reports for free. There's 3 reporting agencies: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Now, you do have to provide your social security number, but if you access this website And again, from your secure browser on your Wi-Fi. I prefer people don't do this when they're out and about. Even on your phones, you can do it, but it's hard to see. I always prefer at home on your own Wi-Fi if you're going to use your phone, or at home you can use your own laptop or tablet. Annualcreditreport.com. If you log in there and you'll see that it's a secure website, then you can access and you can choose Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion, or choose all three and check your credit report. Because if somebody has gotten your personal identifying information, they'll probably try to maybe get a loan, get credit cards, and try to spend money as if they're you. All right. More protections. Make sure I talk about the security of your computer. If you are going to go on your computer and put your password in and access online banking, or maybe book a flight where you're using your credit card, or go to Amazon.com and make purchases, that's only your security of the website is only as good as the security of your device. Password protect your computer and any mobile devices. You want to shred. On that password protecting, I also want to mention, I'm jumping ahead and it might even be on the next screen. Let me see real quick. Nope. You also want to make sure you have multi-factor authentication when you're logging into these, to anywhere where you have to put your password in. Okay. And you want to make sure, as I said earlier, that these are legitimate websites you're going to. Okay. And you want to make sure you're on your secure Wi-Fi. Okay. Always make sure your computer is properly updated. So if it needs, oftentimes when we purchase a laptop, they'll recommend automatic updates. Absolutely do that. Now on our device, our phones and our tablets like these, we will get a few times a year, you'll see in your settings, it'll tell you that you need to update to the next version. Always do that, because there are security patches. There's reasons why they do updates, and it's not just to drive us crazy because things move around sometimes. It's for our protection. So you want to make sure you do those updates on these devices and update your apps. You go into the app store, okay? And you want to check and make sure you may see a number where your icon is, and you want to make sure you regularly update your apps. Because again, if you're going onto online banking on an app, you want to make sure you're using the latest version of it. Okay. I want to make sure I point that out. Shred documents that contain any personal information. That's kind of common sense, and many of us have heard this before. Use privacy settings on social media, and don't share personal information online. The less personal information that is there, at least if you have privacy settings, you're just sharing all that to your friends. If you don't have privacy settings and your Facebook, Instagram, whatever you're using is open to anyone and everyone, then there's a likelihood of somebody scrolling, checking, seeing all the things you like, getting information about you. And this is how they befriend you for this romance scam. Okay. Before disposing of your computer or device, make sure to clear personal information off of it. And of course, just to reiterate, beware of phishing and spoofing calls, emails, or texts. And this is my information. Our website is ct.gov/DOB. We've got a lot of resources for consumers. If you scroll down and go to the section for consumers, we have a lot of great resources. Facebook, we have a Facebook page, facebook.com. You go to CTDOB, and that's where a few times a month, sometimes more frequently, we really don't inundate people with, certainly not daily emails, but we try to put a lot of fraud and scam information out there to share. And if you need to contact us, there's our 1-800 number, and we have an email. It's banking.complaints@ct.gov. And you can contact that. Will be responded to by our consumer affairs team. And they take complaints, they help you with issues and information. And like I said, just a lot of good information. So I know I've gone over time, but I am going to, at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. so that if anyone has questions, Carla, I
Yeah.
apologize for going over. I thought I was
No,
making really good time, but
it was great. Lots of great information. Thank you. I don't
yes.
see any questions at the moment, but people can certainly add questions to the chat box if they would like. There was one mention, and I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit more about Google screening on a cell phone. Someone says they use that to identify scammers. I'm not too
I'm not
familiar with that.
familiar. I'm not
Mm,
familiar with that either. That's a Google
okay.
product.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really can't. I probably couldn't recommend or, kind of give my
Yeah.
opinion on it anyway, since it's not related to the Department of Banking. But I certainly say to people, services like that generally are often very helpful. A lot of times our telephone provider offers services where it might, when a phone call rings, it might say spam or scam detected. But I will say just, I've heard anecdotally, sometimes people have missed doctor calls because maybe the doctors they're calling from their cell phone, or the nurse there or somebody in the office, we're not always, so it may not always catch, scam calls. I just tell people generally, if you get a lot of calls, try not to answer them. If you get calls that are from unknown numbers, just screen your calls. It's really the best method. If we don't answer our phone, they often don't leave messages. But when we answer, we're immediately, we have a certain percentage chance that, we think we're gonna hang right up, but if they say something that, oh, like maybe sounds familiar or they pique our interest, the longer we stay on, the longer there's a good chance that we could, fall prey to whatever they're telling us. So we just need to be careful.
That makes sense.
So
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. I
Any,
love this person that says
yeah,
that they don't answer their phone
yeah.
and the answering machine actually says that they're screening calls. That's perfect. And you're absolutely right. Scammers do hang up. Unless it's a robocall and they just talk into it and it's a robocall.
Any other questions? Well, we have Kathleen here. And thank you for sharing your contact information. That's a great resource.
Sure. Yeah, we just have to be diligent and just remember, like they're trying to get us to give them that information. So we just have to be super, super diligent. Any of us that have, I don't even like to always say older relatives, but if we have relatives that are declining in any kind of way, particularly cognitively, my mother was home with dementia before she moved out of her home. And you really have to, it's a lot of times people in those situations don't know to screen their calls. So it's perhaps doing other methods like, maybe making sure they don't have a lot of money on their credit cards or that they, you know, uh, it's just being diligent and keeping our eye on family members like that. That's all I'll say on that.
Yeah,
So thank you
that's a
very
great
much.
thought. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I learned a lot for sure. And hopefully we'll all be safer now.
Yes, I hope so. I hope so. Be
Yes.
careful. Don't answer those phones and just try to remember all those red flags I shared.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathleen. And
All right.
the presentation was recorded, so we'll try to post that on our YouTube channel within the next couple of weeks. Thank you,
Wonderful.
everybody.
All right. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.